Welcome to the STEM Sessions podcast. I am Jarl Cody the Smeether, your host and narrator. This episode is going to be somewhat informal, which is why I'm numbering and naming it Episode 0. The goal is to have a simple discussion about who I am, why I'm making this podcast, and what you can expect from it. Future episodes will be more formal, and that's why I'm publishing Episode 1 right alongside this one. It's a better example of what's to come. But I feel Episode 0 is still necessary to answer the basic questions you might be asking and to share where I want to take this podcast, providing enough intrigue to make you curious for more. Or maybe it won't, only time will tell. This is the STEM Sessions Podcast, Episode 0. I guess I'll start with a bit about me. I'm a mechanical engineer with over 20 years of experience in the aerospace and defense industry. My design tasks can be classified as electronics packaging, which you can think about it this way. Anything mechanically that needs to be done in order to productize electronics, that's what I do. So I'm involved with circuit cards, thermal analysis, structural analysis, making sure the part survives vibration, making sure it meets its weight. I design structures, bus bars for power distribution, interconnects, etc., etc. Like most engineers, I began as an individual contributor, which means I was designing basically very low-level parts, all being supervised and mentored by other more senior engineers. Eventually, I moved on to more complex parts, more complex assemblies, taking leadership and ownership of those parts I was designing. From there, I moved on to mechanical team lead, meaning I was in charge of the full mechanical design of a program. I did a bit of a stint in team lead, which taught me how to deal with schedules and budgets, and that just wasn't for me. So I went back into the technical track, and now I'm a subject matter expert within my company. These days, I don't do a whole lot of design, which can sometimes be disappointing. I do miss doing that, but I do enjoy what I'm doing now, which is mostly writing white papers to document our processes, to highlight shortcomings and what we can do better. I sit on design reviews, both at the formal design review level as well as informal peer reviews and tabletop reviews. I write and teach classes geared towards new hires to help them shorten their learning curve. I help write proposals for new programs and new work. And I also get called on to a lot of failure investigations with hardware in the labs and hardware during troubleshooting. I may discuss specifics in future episodes of this podcast, but I got to be honest with you, unless you're kind of in that field already, a lot of the technical aspects of what I do, it can be pretty dry and boring, but maybe some of the softer skills or the non-design specifics might be interesting to some of you. So why did I start this podcast? Well, it started as a meetup maybe 3 years ago. And I started that meetup in order to learn from other people. I wanted to teach what I knew, and I wanted to learn what other people in unrelated STEM fields knew. It was open to professional people in STEM. It was also open to quote unquote lay people that were interested in STEM as well. And the idea was it would be an exchange of value. I would teach something one week, and then the next week I could get to sit back and learn from someone else who had more experience in a field than I did. But it didn't quite work out. It was a good plan, but it didn't quite work out. I ended up doing the vast majority of the work. I would have people sign up to present at the next meeting, and then 3 days out, they would cancel on me or just not respond to my emails. They would ghost me. So that would leave me scrambling to try to come up with some material in order to present at the next meeting so people wouldn't be wasting their time. After several meetings of this repeating itself, I just decided I can't do this work anymore. I don't have the time in my schedule to do that, especially when I'm really not getting anything in return. So that's why I decided, hey, well, let's make it a podcast, because at least that I would have some control over. And if I were to receive any value, be it financial or other, it would come to me and would make sharing these topics and this research worthwhile. The podcast is also part of a bigger plan for the STEM sessions, kind of as a brand or as a name. I'm going to restart the meetups in the very, very near future. And there are also some other components that I want to make, that I want to start as well. Unfortunately, those will have to wait until we're out of this this pandemic and these lockdowns, because they involve being in public with other people. The meetups you can do via Zoom. They're not as fun. I like being in front of people. I like, being able to chat with them in person. But Zooms, they work for now. But the other ideas I have definitely involve real-time public outreach. And unfortunately, that's just not a possibility right now. So regarding the format of these podcasts, I see them falling into about 3 different types. One of them will be, well, let's call them lecture style podcasts. That's where I've done kind of a deep dive, a lot of research into a specific topic that I just happen to be curious about. And I've written a technical paper, or at least a very detailed white paper of sorts. Not journal level quality, but definitely informal presentation quality. Those will be, maybe around the 10 to 15 minute mark. I just feel that if I can't adequately discuss a topic within that time limit, it probably needs to be multiple topics broken up. Those will be more or less completely written before I present them via the podcast, so they'll be much more smooth and produced than this type of discussion we're having now. But I will continue having these types of discussions. Those will be more off the cuff, less researched, more opinion-based. Maybe you could call it even philosophical in a way. And the third type of podcast will hopefully be interviews. I have several friends that I want to discuss a variety of topics, ask them numerous questions. And there are also people that I don't know that I would love to meet to be able to interview them. I think those will wait until I get a bit more polished and a more of a rhythm associated with producing this podcast. Maybe get the audience numbers up a bit, but I'm looking forward to the interviews most of all. I have a lot of plans for those. Again, time-wise, I'm really not going to put a time limit on any of the episodes. Some will be long, some will be short. The majority of them will probably be in the 10 to 15 minute mark, but if I feel a discussion needs longer to be complete, then I'm absolutely going to spend more time on it. I'll be posting show notes for each episode. Now, these show notes could contain full transcripts, could contain outlines, or it might not contain anything at all. It'll contain any research I come up with, any material I used, any links or articles I discussed, but they'll be on the website, and I'll have the link in the description of each episode as it's released. Now, as for topics, anything and everything is on the table. Most will just be topics that I'm curious about, that I might see out in the real world and say, wow, I want to learn more about that. So I figure if I'm going to spend the time teaching myself, then I might as well present it via podcast for everybody else to learn. It's unlikely I will be discussing current events. For one reason, there are just so many other podcasts and news outlets that will do that for you and can do a much better job than I could. And the second and probably more important reason is I just don't work that fast. Say a piece of news pops up on a Wednesday. I just don't think I have the time to do proper research, get the thing recorded and edited and then ready to be published by, say, Monday or Tuesday. I'm just not that flexible. I'm just not that fast. So why try to shoehorn it in? So any current event I will discuss is going to be well after the fact, probably after everybody has played it out and just moved on. That's when I'll come in and give my opinion. This is also not going to become a skeptical podcast. So I'm not going to be debunking anything. I'm not going to be proving that psychics aren't psychic. I'm not going to be setting out to prove that chiropractic is not science-based medicine. There are plenty of other podcasts and groups that do that. You don't need one more, and it's really not something I'm interested in. And to be honest, I just don't really align with the modern skeptical movement these days. Future episodes will likely be dedicated to my experiences going out into the community to talk to people about STEM. This could be when I volunteer to judge at science fairs or speak with teachers and their students. I find all of that very fun and rewarding, and I think it's worth a discussion here and there. There will also be field trips of a sort or reports of when I visit different aquariums and animal sanctuaries, or when I go on hikes. Might do live recordings, or I'll do recordings while I'm on the hike, edited later and posted, discussing the geology that I see or the different plants and animals I come across. There are also a few hikes in the area that have actually a lot of very, very important science history to them that I really want to bring into podcast form. As I mentioned at the top of this episode, while I'm doing this to kind of satisfy a personal itch, if you will, I'm not opposed to making money off the endeavor, or at least breaking even on the costs. So I reviewed several financial models that podcasts use these days to figure out how I want to go forward. And I can tell you this, I will not be accepting advertising on this podcast. Whenever a podcast I listen to has break-in ads, it just disrupts the flow for me, and most of the time I will just fast forward until the ad is over. So I'm not going to be doing that on my podcast. I'm also not going to be doing live reads because, man, that just doesn't fit my personality. I guess bumper ads would be easy, just sliding in an advertisement at the beginning or the end of the show. But I'm just not into hawking whatever mattress, shave kit, underwear, or VPN is currently dumping money into podcasts. And also, when you do accept advertising, it means you're not really free to discuss whatever you want to discuss. You're always worried about not pissing off advertisers. And it also just seems to be a lot of work to try to secure advertisers to begin with. Like I don't have time to go out and make contracts and make pitches. It's just a headache I don't want to deal with. It's also unlikely that I'll be starting a Patreon account or any other tiered model. My main complaint with those models is I'm already making a podcast. Why do I want to spend even more time to make bonus episodes or have members only live chats or Discord discussions just to earn the money? No, I'm making a podcast. That is what should be making me money. So based on that thinking, I will be using the value for value method, which has been used by a few different podcasts and of course perfected by the No Agenda Show. Basically, I'll publish a podcast, you'll listen to it. If you feel you gain value from the information presented, then maybe you'll feel like you should return some of that value. If you think it was worth $0.25, hey, send me $0.25. If you think it was worth $5, send me $5. It's up to you to decide how much value you gain from this podcast. And the idea being that if I'm good enough and enough people feel that they're gaining value, then I will actually make money, or like I said, at least hopefully break even. So right now we'll be accepting money through PayPal. All the information will be on the value for value page on our website. And of course, there'll be a link in the description of every podcast as it's released. As of the release of this episode, I have about 4 to 5 podcasts in the can. That means these are recorded and edited and ready to go. After that, I have maybe another 7 to 8 that are completely written, another handful that are in outline stages that I'm researching. So if I keep a weekly schedule, that gets me in the 3 to 4 months worth of material. After that, I'll probably do a quick evaluation to see if I'm still having fun doing it. If I am, I'm just going to keep publishing because, again, building an audience isn't really the end goal for me here. It's really just to say I've done this, to have fun doing it, to develop my skills in recording, in editing. It's really just a project for me. But if other people enjoy it, then that just makes me happy and I'll enjoy it even more. So I hope you stick around at least for a couple more episodes while I smooth things out and find my rhythm. I know this one was kind of rough because I'm just speaking from an outline and I'm not really used to doing this, but I think the future ones will be a lot better. So please stick around for a few weeks. Send me any comments that you might have, any questions. I'm always open to feedback, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the STEM Sessions podcast. I do my best to always provide accurate information, but unfortunately, I'm fallible like everyone else. So I encourage you to do your own research on the topic we discussed. Corrections and new information are always welcome. Show notes, contact information, and details of our other activities such as meetups can be found on our website, www.thestemsessions.com. If you receive value from this episode and wish to give some back, please visit thestemsessions.com/value for value for ways to support the podcast. And most importantly, please remember that STEM is not the exclusive property of experts, policymakers, or talking heads. Every presenter is susceptible to bias unconsciously or deliberately. So always verify what you read and what you're told. Do your own research, satisfy your curiosity, and keep learning.